The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Johnson. I'm an application engineer here at Allied PLM Solutions. We want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for this session of Lunchbytes. Allied PLM hosts Lunchbytes once a month. We take this opportunity to explore capabilities, features, and different functionality within the different Siemens PLM software products that we service. To maximize the value of your time during these half-hour sessions, we're going to focus on specific topics or workflows, and we'll welcome your suggestions for any topics of future discussion. Today we're going to look at Solid Edge custom tools. We have the ability to customize Solid Edge through the exposed COM interface, often called the application programming interface. And today we'll look at some of the sample customization that's been delivered with Solid Edge during install. To avoid audio feedback and the other distractions that often come with teleconference, we've placed all of you in a listen-only mode today, but we welcome and encourage you to email us your questions, comments, concerns, or feedback on today's sessions. And I'll do my best to respond to all those this afternoon or as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. For our agenda, we're going to take a high-level look at customization. What is it and what are its benefits? We're going to demo the custom tools, or some of them, that have been installed with Solid Edge out of the box, and we'll take a look at some user-specific customization. When we talk about customization, it's going to fall into two broad categories. We talk about macros and we talk about add-ins. And some of you are familiar with these terms from other applications, even in the Microsoft Office suite, where you can create a macro to automate redundant tasks. A macro will typically be delivered as an EXE or a DLL file. It's going to run in its own process outside of the Solid Edge process. An add-in actually runs within the Solid Edge process, and you guys would be aware of this for your 3D connection input device within Solid Edge, tools like Segment Edge, and other add-in products to Solid Edge that run in process. You'll often see API or SDK talked about when we talk about customization, and to make sure everybody's on the same page for these acronyms, API represents the COM type libraries that we talked about earlier, and that's the application programming interface. Simply means that Solid Edge development has exposed us type libraries that we can use to automate Solid Edge through macros or add-ins. SDK is a term that refers to software development kit, and it's really just a combination of the API and some help files and that we can actually use automation to customize Solid Edge. So we ask ourselves, why do we want to customize or automate Solid Edge? And the benefits are going to lie in three major categories. Speed is very obvious to ourselves. We can automate redundant tasks and have them done quicker or without us manning the PC at the time. We can clean our data when data is being inputted. We can make sure that things that need to be capitalized are capitalized, that formatting is applied universally, that things are capitalized. And we've got a great demo to show you a little bit later on how we can clean data as it's inputted by the user so that Solid Edge receives uniform data across your company. And lastly, we can check and validate our data. We're going to make sure that everybody across our company and our install base is doing things the same process each and every time, and that the information in our database or in our Solid Edge files looks the same as uniform. So let's take a look at some demos. We're going to start with taking a look at our Solid Edge install folder. I'm going to bounce over to that now. And when you install Solid Edge, you're going to get two folders that I want to make reference to. One is that SDK. The SDK, if we launch into it, has some additional files and tools that are going to help you if you choose to do automation yourself. These are sample files and tools that have sample code behind them on how we can customize Solid Edge. More importantly, as a user, whether you choose to do your own customization or not, is a custom folder that Solid Edge has delivered. These are examples of fully working customization that you can use for demos and to learn for yourself, or more importantly for the vast majority of folks, is how can I use this tool in my workflow currently. One that I want to start with that we haven't used or needed to use a lot since ST2 when we introduced rectangle by center and the polygon command is a macro called n-sided polygon. And prior to the command being in the Solid Edge user interface, we had a macro that was delivered to do this for us. Anytime we open a folder within the custom folder within Solid Edge, the first thing I'd advise you to do is take a look at the README file. These will either be delivered as a text file or a Microsoft Word document. But the README file will give you some understanding of what this automation, what this custom program will do for you and what was it intended to do. Also let you know if there's any known limitations. Gives us some information about the type libraries that this macro calls and tells us what its use is. The general use of this tool is to construct polygons from 3 to 360 sides. Can be placed in a sketch or can be placed in a draft. And just to show how this tool's work, we will go ahead and run it. Within any of these custom folders, there will be a bin folder. This is common programming understanding for anybody who programs and compiles these executables or DLLs. Otherwise, you just need to know that when you enter a custom folder, you'll go to the readme.txt file, and then you'll go into the bin folder, and within the bin folder, you'll find the executable. The executable is actually this piece of customization we're going to take advantage of. So I'm going to launch this tool, and I'll show you later how you can map this to your quick access toolbar in Solid Edge and make it a whole lot more convenient up front for your day-to-day use. And then we'll bounce over to Solid Edge where I've got a draft already running. This customization is really quick and easy. I'm simply going to select the type of dimensioning scheme I want for the hexagon, the number of sides we want on our hexagon, and the size of it. At this point in time, this information is mapped to my mouse cursor, and whenever we place our mouse, we're placing that hexagon. There's additional options on this particular piece of customization that says to apply relationships. We'll note that even though I've got maintain relationships on, that we simply placed some geometry at this point, that there are no relationships to that polygon. But if we go back and run that tool again, and this time we say, I do want to apply relationships. We'll change this to 8 size again and 15. And we turn apply relationships on. This time when we place our polygon, we actually have relationships that hold its data together. So quick and easy tool just to show you what is automation, what is customization, and there's other tools in this custom folder we'd like to explore. So let's clean up our draft here real quick and bounce back over to our custom folder and explore some other tools. There's a tool that some of you may have used, and if not, I'm going to point it out to you and show you that it's got some great function. It's a batch tool. This runs outside of Solid Edge, and we'll call Solid Edge as it needs. And if we read the README file, it's going to tell us that this actually allows us to do batch printing processes or batch conversion processes, either into Solid Edge or from Solid Edge. So we'll run this batch tool and take a look at the interface that it provides. Again, in the bin folder, we'll find an executable, and we'll launch that. You'll see here we get the ability to browse to any folder to find the data we'd like to take some action on. In this case, I'm simply going to browse to my training folder within Solid Edge. And I'm going to find the actuator clamp project that's already there. And the data is not being exposed right now because this tool is looking for draft documents. If I were to print all the draft documents from this particular folder, but in this case, I know that I've created part files and assembly files, and what I'd really like to do is translate each of those files to the new .sev format so I can open those on my iPad. So I'm going to convert these files to the iPad viewer SEV format. And then as it exposes the options to either show assembly documents or part and sheet metal documents. And I want to process all of these files, but if I were to select any one or use typical Control-Shift logic, I can do selected files, and you can also dig down within subdirectories. But at this point in time, we're going to process all the files in this directory and say process. If I hover over my Solid Edge window, you'll see that the windows are actually opening, processing, and closing. Solid Edge has done all that quicker than obviously we could open these 7 files and open and close and open and close. So let's bounce over to that training file and look at the actuator clamp, and you'll see that we did just create these SEV files from the native Solid Edge files. I think that clearly demonstrates how automation can certainly save us time and do some of these redundant tasks for us. This file also created a batch file, a log file they called batch, that tells us what it did, and it tells us that it successfully translated each of these native files to the SEV file type. If it had any problems it encountered, it would log that here, and we'd know what we need to do manually. So I'll select these files and remove them just so that they're not redundant on my drive. And we'll continue to go back over to our custom folder and look at some new tools. Batch has been around for a long time. N-sided polygon was an old friend to some of you who have used it before. There's a new tool that's been delivered in ST5 that I think many of you will agree with me is a great tool to start to investigate assembly relationships. So in ST5, you'll have Solid Edge Assembly Relationship Browser. Again, you'll want to take some time to look at the README file. This will tell you some of the known limitations and what this does. And this tells us it's not going to look at relationships within adjustable assemblies. So you need to know what it is and what it is not going to do. It's going to tell us the general usage, and it's going to also give us a couple warnings down here that tell us that some of these options will activate parts. So you need to know what it's doing, and in order to check different relationships, it's going to make parts active to do that. So we'll just fire this customization up from the custom folder. I mentioned earlier that you can add any of this customization to your quick access toolbar, which makes it a lot more convenient from the Solid Edge user interface. So what I want to show you is how to do that. So we're going to close this process. We don't need batch anymore. But let's bounce over to Solid Edge. And I've got an assembly open here. And I have mapped that same piece of customization to my quick access toolbar. It's one that I know that I'm going to use many times when I'm in the assembly environment. And for the sake of this demo, this is an assembly that I've been given from a coworker. And I know that I need to manipulate the angle on this file, but I don't really know at what part or what subassembly that relationship was applied. So I'm going to run this tool, and I'm going to ask it to look for only angle relationships. So you'll see here that every relationship within Solid Edge is exposed. We can right-click and deselect the current selection set, and I want to see angles only, and I only want to see solved relationships. So I want to see all the angle relationships that pass. And as I highlight these two options, it's going to show me graphically where these two angles possibly reside. And I know that this is the angle that I now need to change. Without doing a lot of manual searching through the Pathfinder, I want to select this part, and I want to select the components. It now highlights in the Pathfinder for me the two files, the two items that this angle relationship lives between. So I'm going to select this pivot bracket, and I'm going to find the angle to it. And something I'm sure we've all seen before is that when we try to edit a variable from a model that we didn't necessarily create, we'll find that we create conflicting relationships. We get these lightning bolts through our Pathfinder. We get failed relationships in our items. And this assembly relationship tool is great for looking at not only solved relationships, but unsolved and unsatisfied relationships as well. So what we need to do is troubleshoot this model and find out what's conflicting, and this tool can really help us do that. We're going to turn on all the relationship types, but really what we want to see here is unsolved relationships. And we'll notice these are all our unsolved relationships. There's a whole lot to start to troubleshoot here, so maybe we look at our unsatisfied relationships instead. And if we look at unsatisfied relationships, we see that the angle we created was not able to be satisfied because it conflicted with something else in the model. Again, we can search our Pathfinder and try to find that variable again. But from this tool, we've got the ability to just simply suppress that without searching for it. So we can suppress that relationship from this tool, whether I knew where it was located in my Pathfinder or not. And now I see that my Pathfinder has cleaned up and I don't have any conflicts anymore. But I have to assume that there's something conflicting keeping me from being able to set that relationship, and I think we've all been tripped up before by a grounded relationship. So logic tells me that I want to come in here and look for grounded relationships. And a grounded relationship would be in the solved state. And I see that I got two files or two relationships that are grounded. One is for the base part that grounds the assembly in space, and the other is for this pin. I'm not sure what it is or what it's related to, but what I want to try to do is select this item, and I want to suppress that grounded relationship. So now I've got two relationships that I know that I intentionally suppressed. One's the grounded relationship of this pin we just did. And our workflow previously suppressed the angular relationship, which we really want to unsuppress and allow the variable change that we made from 5 to 20 to take place. So let's turn on all of our relationships again. And instead of looking for solved or unsatisfied relationships, let's look for any relationship in our Pathfinder that's in the suppressed state. So there's a connecting spring within this body that I did nothing to, but it was already in a suppressed state when we opened the file. The angular relationship, which we suppressed to avoid conflicts, is there. And also this pin, which was grounded, we suppressed that ground relationship. Let's take our angle and now toggle the suppression state again. And now it looks like I've got a solved model. I'm going to close this tool real quick and take a look at what we found. We knew that this pivot bracket had the relationship on it, and indeed now my 5 degrees has changed to 20, and I can change it back to 5 and back to 20. And by using this assembly relationship browser tool, which is supplied for you in ST5, you can interrogate the relationships that exist within your assembly. There's other ways to use this tool I'm sure you guys will find, and I encourage you guys to try it out and let us know how you're using it, how it helps you out. I know that if we simply return this part to its failed state, if we put this back at 5 degrees and reground this pin and force this to fail again, I know that in my history there's been a time where I wanted to use the drag component command, but drag component is not exposed when there's conflicted relationships in the Pathfinder. So we can also use this tool to simply take every solved relationship, and we can use the group selection here to say select all components, and we can actually suppress every relationship in this model. So now anything in this model that had a relationship to it is really suppressed, and our parts are floating in space. There's a couple axial lines that I did not select when I used my group selection tool because they would actually be within a different select set here. So if we select set all of these, you'll see that we did not pick some of these because they actually live within not a solved state, but between set members or between fixed members. So you'll play with those tools and understand how each of these select sets work, and how we can use the select all and the deselect all in both of these windows to get the outcomes we need. But just quickly now we can see that our drag component tool is activated again, but we need to know that we've suppressed every relationship in our model. Assembly relationship browser. And I told you that we added that to our quick access toolbar. I'm going to open up another file in just a moment and show you exactly how we do that. The next piece of customization we want to look at is a custom sensor for reading mass in a file. Let's take the handle out of that same jack and take a look quickly at its properties. This handle is currently about almost 3 pounds. It's 2 3/4 pounds. And we want to make this as long as we can, but we've been told we can't make it over 4 pounds. So we know that we can come in and make an edit to this part. We can make it a foot longer and then we can go back here and update our mass, and we see that we're over 4 pounds. Let's undo our change. We'll take our 12 inches back off. Note that we're back to our 2 3/4 pounds. We've got sensors in Solid Edge, but none of them here allow me to put a sensor against the mass. We've got custom sensor, but there's no information there, and I don't know what those are. That's what you're going to find in your custom folder under custom sensors. The README file in this particular instance is quite in-depth and tells you how you can edit these. It's actually a Word document. I'm going to open it real quickly, but we're not going to spend a lot of time in it because it's very specific. So let me let this open. And I apologize, it opened on a second monitor that I'm using. And it tells us that we've got 3 different types of custom sensors. We've got a get mass function, a get cost or a cost sensor function, and a measure distance. The particular one I'm interested in right now is the mass, and I think you'll see how this is a value. So I'm going to register. I've got a 64-bit install of Solid Edge. I'm going to register this particular bit of customization. And now you'll see when I bounce back over to my custom sensors again and go to this custom, I have activated the sensor project, and I've got those 3 different sensors in here that I'd like to look at. So in this instance, I'm going to say get the mass, and we're going to set this sensor up like we always have. We'll call this sensor mass. I want to know when it's greater than 4 pounds, and let's take a look at the value anywhere between 2 and 5, and we'll say okay. And I'll pin this down so we can take a look what's going on. So now we see my mass here, and if I were to change this value again to 12, we're going to see that our sensor has failed. But the benefit of this mass sensor is that it's actually very dynamic. I can select the face of this part and with synchronous technology make the edit, and we'll see that the sensor is actually dynamic as the edit takes place. I'm going to wait just a moment for that to catch up with you all through the GoToMeeting. But I'm hoping you're seeing what I'm seeing, that as I drag this face, that the sensor is now down to 3 3/4. The other option we have is to use this almost as a trial and error tool. We can certainly do the math and add some variables, but what if we choose to make this a larger diameter? What if we make this a 1-inch rod? I see now that my mass is actually at 6.6. It's totally failed, but I can make this much shorter, and obviously the scope of this example was to make it longer, not shorter, but we're really just going to look at how this custom sensor measures mass in a very dynamic way for us. Now you see we're down to 3.95. So again, custom sensors, you can expose the DLL. We talked that this automation would either be an EXE file or a DLL file. So here's our DLL, and within that DLL we simply have some functions that are doing the math for us that return this. Now let's take a look at how we can do customization in the draft environment. A lot of times our users ask us about property text in the draft. They tell us that they need to modify property text from 5 or 6 different locations through the property fields. We've got the summary where we use the title. We've got the project information, which is our part number, our current rev level, and the name. And then within our custom folder, we put all kinds of company standards of what we'd like to see. And it really takes quite a bit of time to fill out this information. Some user customization allows us to expose a form that the user can populate all this data in one spot. Aside from that, it forces us, we talked about doing things right and applying standards across our organization. This forces us to fill in information where we have to fill it in. It forces us to do things such as capitalization. Our standard says that any information that's on our drawing should be in all caps. You can't see this, but if I type this in all lowercase and say this is a test title, I'm typing in lowercase, but my customization is taking that and forcing the capitalization. And now if I update my drawing, it automatically updates the property text on the drawing and puts the title there. The benefit of this is if I left the title out and I tried to update my form, the form will not update and close. It's going to force the user to populate this field, same as the drawn by information. We need to know who created this drawing. So if I were to try to update this field, it will not close this form until we populate this data. There's additional customization in this particular form. For example, my project name is coming from a controlled environment. In this case, it was Solid Edge Embedded Client because we use Team Center. And if I click the title field, it's going to read that data, it's going to capitalize it, and it's going to put it in that field. Additionally, the drawn by information is me. I'm the user. I click on that field for the first time, and it's telling me to add your user information. So at the top here, I go to my user information, and it knows that I'm logged into this machine. So whenever I'm logged in, I want my name to be represented as Matt Johnson. Again, capitalization on my keyboard is not mattering because the customization is taking over and forcing these to be all capital for me. So whenever I click a field that says use my name, type in m.johnson. Whenever I click a field that wants my initials, put in JMJ. So now if I click the drawn by field, it's going to type my name for me. And if I click a field that tells me I'm the revising detailer, it puts my initials in. Likewise, in the engineer, I usually work with 3 or 4 engineers on a regular basis. I can come populate a list of engineers that I work with on a regular basis. And once I save this information, this drop-down box exposes this list of engineers. And when I update that, we'll see that it updates the information on the drawing, Bob and my initials and the date. These other 2 fields are CRCO information fields. We can certainly put any type of information there we want. This would be certainly, ECO number 1. This would be ECO number 2. I can put my drawing scale on here and the current rev, and if we update this, again, we update all these fields. So I hope you get a feel for how user customization can really aid you in speeding your processes, how it can clean your data, and how you can maintain company specs across multiple users. There are some next steps here for us. We've got the choice to make that you're either going to choose to customize for yourself. If you choose to do that, I want to point you toward Solid Edge Help. Within the Solid Edge Help, there's some information here for Solid Edge programming. If you launch this, it'll take you to the programmer's guide and start you in your way on how to do that. The other option is that you may choose not to program for yourself, but you're going to choose to take advantage of the customization that we've shown you today and spend some more time in the custom folder. And the last option is that, you see that there's a huge benefit of this for your company. You'd like to talk more about it and look more into Ally PLM customization services. We can offer macros or add-ins, and the real benefit there is you've got a single point of contact. If you're calling for technical support already, the problem's either in the customization or the problem's in the part file, and you're only calling one person to troubleshoot. Let me back up to, if you choose to customize for yourself, and point you to BBS.notes, BBS Notes. If you're already there in the miscellaneous form, there is a programmer form as well, Solid Edge Programming. And also, if you go to CodePlex, Solid Edge has some information out there on the web at the CodePlex site. So if you go to CodePlex and type in Solid Edge, you'll see there's 4 different projects out here, and the samples for Solid Edge is the latest and greatest information that Jason Newell's contracted with Siemens for, and has updated a lot of the help files and gives us some examples of how to call the different API. I want to remind you that today's presentation and all of our lunch bites can be found on Ally PLM's website. You can go to the Events tab and go to Lunch Bites, and you'll be able to click the Lunch Bites replays. And I'll tell you that coming in May, we're going to take another look into Solid Edge at and how to change the custom interfaces of Solid Edge, such as your holes.txt files, your reports, and your different draft lists. The other thing you'll find on our website is our upcoming training. I'll point out that if you register for training in March, April, or May, we've got a great promotion now to give you a free iPad mini. So take advantage of that. If you were on the edge of whether you wanted to take training or not, that's a great opportunity. So if you have any questions or concerns or comments about what we talked about today, we'd love to get an email or a phone call from you. You can reach out to me directly or reach out to our support at support@allyplm.com. If you're calling for technical support, you can call our main line and hit extension 4. If you wanted to reach me, you can hit extension 15. We thank you for your time. If you have any suggestions for future topics, we love to incorporate those into a Lunchbyte for you, so send those on as well. Thanks for your time today, and we'll see you next time during Lunchbytes.